I am so happy to welcome you to our virtual launch of the website Environment and Engagement in German Studies, which is a resource hub for materials on eco-criticism, language pedagogy, and academic civic engagement. My name is Kylie Kost, and I am a lecturer in German at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, and I am joined by my wonderful colleagues and collaborators, Seth, Nicole, and Dan, and I'll have them introduce themselves. Seth.
Hello, everybody. I'm Seth Peabody. I'm an assistant professor of German at Carleton College, and I'm excited to be putting this project out into the open after collaborating with everyone here for a good while now.
Nicole.
Hello, I'm Nicole Fisher, and I'm a graduate student at UW-Madison, and I'm also happy to be here.
And I'm also happy to be here. I'm Dan Nolan, and I teach at the University of Minnesota Duluth, and I've been working on sustainability and German studies for the past 4 or 5 years. I'm very, very excited to be able to work with this group.
Great, so now you know who we are, and you can see on your screen a plan for this event. So we'll give a little bit of background on this project, which has been in the works for about 2 years now, and then we'll share an overview of the website and the resources available on it, and then we'll pivot to an exciting conversation with Beth Kautz and Charlotte Moline, who have both been involved in curricular innovation in the area of environmental studies and German studies. After that, we'll open it up for discussion for everyone to join, and we plan to wrap up within the hour. So again, thank you for joining us. And when we get to the discussion, you'll be able to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself. So we'll see you then. I want to start with a little background on this collaboration, because it's been a truly collaborative effort involving the 4 of us and more people over the last couple of years. So in 2019 at the GSA in Portland, Seth Peabody and Dan Nolan here organized a seminar on sustainability in German studies, from eco-criticism to community engagement. And that is this absolutely wild photo you see here of people gathered together in a hotel conference room in person. So that was 2019. And the title of the seminar, again, from eco-criticism to community engagement, already hints at this kind of misalignment that we're trying to address with our website project. We have all these people working on eco-criticism from a scholarly point of view, and perhaps teaching classes, upper level seminars on eco-critical literature or film. But we had still this gap with the community engagement. How were we reaching communities outside of the university and sharing what we know and what our students are learning about environmental topics and sustainability with a broader audience? That was one of the main themes that arose in the seminar. And then a few months after that, with the help of Charlotte Moline, who's here as well, we had a follow-up event at the University of Minnesota that was sponsored by the DAAD. And I know Joella Jacobs is here, and she was a big part of that too. Both of these in-person events led us to reflect on how we can build some type of online engagement or online platform that would capture the momentum that always arises from these big conferences or workshops. We noticed that we had so many ideas, but we didn't really have anything to do with them, or we didn't have a place to put them. We also kept reflecting on the question of community engagement and how difficult it is to begin projects that reach a broader audience, especially if you're in a visiting position, changing institutions often. Do you have to start a new project over and over again? What resources do we already have that we could share with people interested in doing these projects? So we decided to move forward with the idea of building an online platform that would allow people to share resources in the 3 areas that we'll get to soon. And we were so excited that Nicole Fisher, who you heard from and is a PhD candidate at UW-Madison, joined us as a collaborator for the project. And as everyone knows, the pandemic has only stress the need for virtual collaboration and adaptation. We're all seeing that, but we've also all become very comfortable with our online presence and have had many Zoom meetings. We also have a parallel project that I'd like to mention and that you should be hearing more about very soon. So Dan, Seth, and I have been working on a special section of the upcoming issue of Unterrichtspraxis that should be forthcoming any day now, certainly within the month, and that gathers some of the projects that align or perhaps realign these areas of eco-criticism, language pedagogy, and community engagement in German studies. When we were gathering the projects in this special section of this upcoming issue, we realized too that an important element of this conversation is to recognize that the idea of green Germany isn't one single static thing, and that it's always changing, and that we, if we are in the US context like we are, we can't simply translate in this one-to-one way what's happening in Germany to a US context. Instead, there is much more intercultural reflection and work that needs to happen when thinking about the cultural practices surrounding environmentalism and sustainability in Germany, and how we can bring that to US or other contexts, and then especially to contexts outside of academia. So you'll hear more about that soon. And we also explain the motivation for creating the website in our introduction to this special issue. We are not the only ones to create a resource hub or other digital projects. In fact, we're in very good company. I want to shout out or mention just a few here. There's the German Studies Collaboratory, which has teaching material and other material you can use in your research or classes. They have this digital hub with links to several other types of projects. There's also the Black Central Europe online archive that has images, material, teaching ideas on Black people in Europe from the Middle Ages to today. There's Expanding German Studies, which has an extensive bibliography. And then there's the DDGC, Diversity, Decolonization, and the German Curriculum. There's also projects specifically focused on Green Germany, the Green German Project, which Charlotte and Beth will probably talk about later. And there's also the Goethe Institute that has a number of resources available for people interested in the topic. So we have all these examples that we looked at. How are people sharing resources on an online platform? What can we learn from them? What do we want to do? And for us, it really was important to bring together these three main areas of eco-criticism, language pedagogy, and academic civic engagement surrounding environmental topics and sustainabilities in German studies. We wanted to design a platform that would show how these three areas, even though we've separated them here, do indeed overlap and work together and can mesh very well in any German class, from 101 to upper level seminars, even to graduate work, which we'll talk about later. So we, the four of us, were already working on these topics individually, and we were able to come together and expand them for this website. We were funded partly by a Mellon grant for public works at Carleton College, and we were able to work with two wonderful undergraduates, Ella Hine and Henry Friesen. You saw a Zoom with them on an earlier slide. And we first built this website last December 2020 during our winter break at Carleton. We encountered plenty of roadblocks along the way. We've all learned, I think, a lot about web design that we didn't know before. We learned all about the possibilities and limitations of a WordPress website. We learned a whole lot about copyright and Creative Commons. And we learned how knowledgeable our librarians are in all of these issues and how we really needed to lean on them and get support from them in figuring all these out. Today now, we are very happy to present the website, Environment and Engagement in German Studies, a resource hub for eco-criticism, pedagogy, and civic engagement. I'm now going to share the website, or just change my browser to the website, and then I believe that Seth will tell us more about the eco-criticism part of the site.
Great. Thanks very much, Kylie. And the plan now is that I'm going to sort of talk through the site and Kylie will click through as I do that. And hopefully we can work with each other well enough to make that clear. So in thinking about these three areas, one of the kind of things we were trying to do as a whole is kind of link eco-criticism, this research area that we've been doing for a while, to the pedagogy fields that really are the bulk of what the time that a lot of us spend in our work, or at least equal parts, and that somehow don't do things the way we do them in our research necessarily. And so one of the places we started in each of these areas is to just get together a bibliography that'll be a pretty good starting list. So maybe we could go to the eco-criticism area. And then in the bibliography, what we have there is not exhaustive, but it is decent and it's growing. And it's really easy to make it keep growing. So if you come across something as you're using the site, you notice, oh, this isn't there, and it would be really useful to have. You can click on the survey link at the top and submit a new proposal. You can just give us the title or the citation, whatever you want. And it's really easy for us to then find that title in a database or in our library search catalog and just click on add to Zotero, because what we have is this bib-based tool directly uploads from a Zotero collection. And so it's really easy to expand the bibliography. So that's one piece that is in each area. And then next to the bibliography, we have the materials. And clicking on that, that is where we are sharing. We have sort of a small starting collection, but the idea is to just keep growing the materials that we create that work really well in class. And we're thinking a lot about making this work at all different scales and levels. And so starting with scale, there are whole classes up there. For example, the first one, the syllabus for Thinking Green, is a kind of German literature eco-criticism class taught in English, but it could be done as an advanced German class also. And if you scroll down just quickly to see everything that's there, it's kind of the learning goals, all of the texts that can really make it easy to put together a whole class or adapt that to your own needs. Then as the scales get smaller, if you go back to the materials, there are also things like a major project that you could do in a course or in a number of different courses. There's one on like the City Symphony Film Project that comes out of studying German films from the 20s and then has students make their own film project. And all the way down at the bottom, there's a link to the resources. And for all of these, we've clicked on, we've sort of made a Google Drive collection that's publicly accessible. And so that link gets you to the project description, but then also kind of the rubric, the presentation expectations, and the syllabus for the whole class if it's useful. And then kind of my favorite part of the materials we have so far are little things that can really be just added to any course. You don't need to change your whole syllabus. So the Franz Hohler reading guide, I think, is my favorite example, where if you click on the link there, it takes you directly to an external Google Doc that just has sort of a table that guides students' observations and then some questions building off of that. But what that gives, like for my teaching, is a model that I can really easily adapt to, like intro level vocabulary and questions, or even advanced level vocabulary and questions. And it comes from this idea of small teaching, where you can just make these minor changes or small activities that can really add engagement in a lot of different courses. And so that has to do with scale of different kinds of projects. But of course, as language teachers, we're also thinking about language level and where things fit into the curriculum. And so for that, I will pass it off to Nicole Fisher.
Yes, then I will introduce you quickly to the language pedagogy category. And speaking generally, we wanted this category to provide material that is not only limited to just eco-criticism, or it doesn't necessarily have to have a civic engagement component, but it can have material that is connected to nature, sustainability, the environment, and so on. And so this is the idea behind that. And as you have seen before, there are also the two parts, bibliography and teaching material. But for now, I will just focus on the teaching material to highlight three important aspects for us. And for this, we can say that if you take a look, again, we have syllabi, we have units, or we have small activities. And one example that I want to take a closer look at is the Denkanstoß Nachhaltigkeit. So maybe you can click on that. And speaking about this example, you can see it says level A1 to C2. And this is one important aspect for us, that you can start teaching environmental topics at 101 level or go up to a graduate seminar. So don't worry, you can just make it work no matter what level you're teaching. And the other aspect that is important for us is that you can make your students engaged into critical thinking. And this is the same example you can just say in the Denkanstoß Nachhaltigkeit, and connect it to different disciplines and also ask critical questions. So even if you click on the here that is linked to a Google document, and it is just two very simple questions, and you can go as big or as small as you want. So you can scale it up or scale it down, and you make it as critical as you want, or just start thinking about important topics like sustainability. And the last thing that I would like to highlight is that all the material that we have on our website is using a Creative Commons license. So for everyone who wants to use it, you can just download it and adapt it to your own needs. And then what we want to encourage you is to maybe resubmit it and link it to the initial material that you have used, so you can see what the development of the material is. And the only thing that we ask you to do is to acknowledge the initial author or creator. But other than that, you're just free to go wild with the material that we provide. And that being said, I want to pass it on to take a look at the last category. Dan.
Thank you. So maybe in the discussion, we can talk more about what is the reasoning behind bringing these elements together. And there's a great deal to be said there, but in the interest of time, I'll give a very brief synopsis of academic civic engagement. So in order to give an introduction to the academic civic engagement part of this project, it's helpful to start off by noting that each of the components that this site seeks to bring together are on their own already complex, compelling, and rewarding, but difficult areas of curriculum development, as you see. And that's the reason why streamlining the development process and efficiently providing access to useful materials is so important and is the core goal of this site, I think. So this is especially true for academic civic engagement in this part of our project, where you'll see on the one hand, some of the larger groups of activities and curriculum development projects that are presented on the site, and that's under projects and materials. You'll also find helpful guidance on creating academic civic engagement activities in the bibliography for this section. Again, for instance, you'll find articles and resources that can help you assess your institution's readiness for the community partnership development process. You'll find pathways for harnessing the student motivation that many think is the key driver in the language learning benefits associated with work on sustainability. And you'll find examples of ways you can tie development efforts to existing higher education standards, as well as sample survey materials to help in assessing outcomes and student interest. And we think those will really be helpful. Going forward, we want to, we're going to work to expand this part of the site as well by providing an even wider variety of support for work at the intersection of language and cultural learning in German studies, community engagement, sustainability, and climate action. For instance, many have noted that community engagement work, while clearly valuable for students, is often less rewarded than other activities, say, in the tenure review process. And we'll be providing examples of criteria that can help faculty advocate for themselves and for the impact of this work. And with that, I'll hand it back to Kylie.
All right, so that hopefully gives you an overview of the website and how we intend it to function, how the areas overlap, enrich each other, and how, I should show you, you can also submit. So you can submit anything. You can submit a project, you can submit a link to something you've already done, you can submit something to any of the bibliographies. And one of the things that WordPress does let us do is cross-link all of these things. So even though you'll select what category your submission fits into, you can select multiple ones, and that will be reflected on the website and the tags then. So we are very happy to bring this all together and present our work. At the same time, we acknowledge that we are not the first people to do eco-critical German studies, to think about green Germany in the language classroom. And with that, we want to say we're not instigating a new turn in German studies. It was already there. This work has been going on for at least a decade. What we want to do is find a way to bring it all together that allows for adaptation, like Nicole was mentioning, and that allows us to quickly add something to a bibliography or fix a broken link, things like that. So we're really trying to gather these efforts already in progress. And along those lines, we invited some people who have been doing this work for the past decade plus here today. And I'm going to click ahead on our slides to show you who will now be joining the conversation. And I'm also pinning them into the Zoom screen, and I'll stop sharing the screen in a second so that you can just see our conversation. But we wanted to have this conversation about curricular innovation, because as we've learned over the past year, it's very hard work to start a project like this, and it does require this collaboration. So to have this conversation, we've invited Beth Kautz and Charlotte Milline, and then Nicole Fisher into a discussion on curricular innovation. Let me stop sharing so you can hopefully see us all pinned here, and I'll introduce our guests. So Beth Kautz is on the teaching faculty in German at the University of Minnesota in the Department of German, Nordic, Slavic, and Dutch. Beth, you coordinate the second year German curriculum, which you designed to have emphasis on topics in sustainability. And you also created an entire course on the topic, or entire courses on the topic, including one that was supposed to have a short-term study abroad component that then got made virtual due to the pandemic. And on top of all that, you are currently the interim director of the College of Liberal Arts Language Center at the University of Minnesota, and you still made time to join us today. So we're very grateful for that. And Charlotte Milline is now Professor Emeritus at the University of Minnesota, a recent change. Congratulations. And Charlotte, in addition to your many important scholarly contributions on eco-criticism and German nature poetry, you also created a model of a tools-based curriculum in German studies that's focused on language and textual analysis, media, and critical global literacy that lends itself particularly well to environmentally focused courses. In 2019, you published a comprehensive MLA volume on language teaching and the environment. And you were also one of the co-founders of the University of Minnesota's Environmental Humanities Initiative. So the two of you were also, in addition to all of that, creators of the pivotal Green German project in 2011, which was really the first of its kind. If you're not familiar with it, the Green German project is an open access web-based curriculum with modules that guide students through concepts of sustainability and their application in German-speaking countries. And maybe one of my collaborators could put a link to the Green German project into the chat for everyone. So Beth and Charlotte, given your backgrounds in this type of innovative curricular design, I first want to ask you to just reflect on the key benefits and challenges that arise when you're pursuing projects that aim to redesign the curriculum in some way. Beth, do you want to reflect on that?
Unmute myself. Thank you. Yes. So I think when I think about the benefits, is that I find it very, very energizing, actually, and thinking about how it keeps my work relevant, and it helps me to continually adapt to new contexts, either issues in the world or in higher education, and it keeps me thinking about how can I improve society, how can I improve the lives of my students, and it helps me grow and keep learning, which is something I thrive on. So it's sort of self-centered in some ways. Some of the, am I supposed to go into challenges right away?
Yeah.
Challenges. In my experience, I've always, most of the time I've been doing this for a multi-section intermediate level language program at a large university. And so it's never really been just me designing something for my one class. So there's always this idea of bringing other people along, and sometimes they don't want to be brought along. And so it can be disheartening to put a lot of effort into it and feel like it's not really being picked up by other people. So I'll put that out there. Another issue is that you're always creating more work for yourself. And I, every single summer is another project. And sometimes people in my family or close friends are like, didn't you just do that? Every summer you're going down the same path. And it's true. It's true. So it's a real investment. And then one of the things is that often for me, I get really excited about engaging in this innovative process, but I don't take enough time to really think about how I'm going to evaluate it. And sometimes I'm not able to really figure out, is this effective? Maybe it's effective in my particular class, but I'm not sure how it's being carried out by other people using the materials. And so sometimes it's hard to quantify or defend in some ways really what kind of impact it's making. So I'll stop there.
Charlotte, do you want to reflect on some benefits and challenges?
Sure. So I will speak in my role before I was retired as a faculty member at a land grant research university. And now that I'm a professor emerita, I'm still thinking about a lot of these issues. There are many possibilities to work in interdisciplinary ways. And when we're at a large university, there's a great deal of focus on research, but that's always connected with the teaching and the service components. And I always look at it and think, if I were at a liberal arts college, what would this look like? How would it be different? How would it be similar? And some of that ethos of the smaller institution always needs to be brought into the larger institution. So as an administrator, when I think about things, I realize if you go to a dean, if you go to someone who's going to provide you with support to do any kind of a project or to get things going, you have to make your case in a way that is possible. And so you benchmark against other institutions, you find out what's going on in other places. And that was in part the motivation for the Modern Language Association volume of foreign language teaching in the environment that I held up earlier, and laying out some ways in which you could think about the theory, the curriculum, and the institutional structures that are needed to carry these projects forward. And what I saw in working with all languages to put that volume together was we have a lot to share with our colleagues, not only within German studies, but also in other languages. And the more we start doing that, the more energy that's generated. So Beth and I have done workshops before, and we always come out really energized because there are so many great ideas, but you need to think about what is the ripple effect? So you do one small thing and it ripples out maybe into changes in the curriculum, maybe to changes in programs, but also potentially to changes in institutions. And I think right now we're all very much aware of the fact that climate change is an existential challenge, and we also all have a responsibility to teach toward that and to motivate our students and our colleagues to address those changes. So obstacles, what obstacles could there be? Well, for one thing, this takes a lot of time. It takes time to develop the individual resources for your courses. It also takes time to sustain all of those efforts for a long enough period for them to really come to fruition. So the MLA book was an idea that happened 10 years ago. The Green German Project happened even before that. You have to be looking ahead as far as you can and really thinking about where can I make a strategic intervention that'll move us forward. But as you start doing that, at least as I've started doing it and doing it in part with Beth and with Kylie and others who are gathered here for this meeting, I've seen a real snowballing of what goes on. You do one thing and suddenly there are 5 other projects you could be working on or 5 other initiatives.
Well, that's exactly how we're here today, is that it was the ripple effect from all of these different conferences. And we did, as I said, we wanted to find a way to capture that momentum. And I'm glad that we made it work. I'm very grateful for that. So Beth and Charlotte, you both talked in some way about scale. How do we scale this up? What's the difference between doing this at a large university and doing it at a small liberal arts college? And we have Nicole here with us as part of this conversation, who is a PhD candidate and is working on this project as a graduate student. And I thought it would be insightful to hear her perspective. So Nicole, I'm wondering if as a graduate student, you can talk about what you learned from doing this project or from being a part of it, and how you learned it, and if it has supplemented your graduate education or experience.
Maybe at the beginning, I have to say thank you to Kylie, Dan, and Seth, who invited me to be part of this project, because this is maybe the first step that I learned. Going to a conference, participating in research discourse is not just, doing something you have to do, but it's also a reward when then someone comes and says, hey, we remember you. So this is the first part, and I want to thank you for this nice project. And then what I learned about this is maybe something very basic. Like Kylie said, we learned how to do web design, and we always talk about meaningful projects and just starting something that is open. And this is a different kind of work that I normally do as a graduate student, was a step into something that is meaningful, unknown, and something new. And so something that adds to my graduate student education. And it was mentioned before, so I can keep it very short, but I can say that I learned how I can take my own research interest and put it into practice and teach it. And then I just discovered to talk about something that you are interested in is so much more fun. Do I really have to fake in at a restaurant visit? No, maybe not. But what about a vegan restaurant visit? So, you can just tweak it a little bit and it becomes a lot more fun. And then you can take it back to your research, and then it suddenly makes sense. Why do I work on a dissertation project that has eco-criticism as an approach? Maybe because then I create something that is meaningful to communicate with a broader audience, because more people are interested in it. This is what I learned.
Yeah, those small changes are really impactful for teaching. And I think it was you, Nicole, who said on the website, we hope that you can just take something and make it work for you. You don't have to redo the entire curriculum each time. That's something we're all mindful of. I want to go back to Charlotte and Beth now and ask for perhaps one key takeaway about how you can build and maintain momentum for working on new projects. In other words, how can we ensure that these new projects are sustainable?
Well, I have two bits of advice. One is don't try to do everything every semester. So you need to set some priorities and schedule, when am I going to be able to work on this? So if you're updating materials, which is going to be necessary because links disappear. So thinking ahead, this is what I'm doing in the spring, this is what I'm doing in the summer. But then the other thing is I just always have my antennae out. I'm always looking for useful resources. And that for me is also the fun part. How many different listservs I'm on, how many different teaching websites I go to. And I saw on the website, you have my Diigo site marked there. And I started that Diigo social web bookmarking site back when we started the Green German Project, and I still add stuff to it every week. And for me, it's just my way of, I came across something, I can save it, I put some tags on it, and 5 months, 6 months, 10 months from now, I can go back to it, and that helps me find fresh information, updated information, and feels like I, on a daily basis, am engaging in the topic because I take the time to look at those sites.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Beth is talking about, design thinking principles say to us, think about what your users need, think about what is going on in the broader environment and what you really want to accomplish with what you're working on before you start setting it in motion, because otherwise there's going to be a disconnect between what are students interested in, what is your institution interested in. So you need to really be reflective about setting that up. Another thing that comes out of design thinking, and this is specifically down at the Mayo in Rochester, Minnesota, their design thinking unit has a book that talks about think big, start small, move fast. And that's really one of the things that you have to do with this. You're constantly thinking about, we have to save the planet, right? But the way we're going to do this is by changing out some activity in German 101. I don't know, but you can try, and then you can build on that. So I would say, look for collaborators, and there are a lot of collaborators I've talked with from time to time who are in on this call. And think about your own institution and how you can influence them to move in that direction more quickly. So Dan brought up earlier this whole question of faculty incentives, and if you're coming up for promotion and tenure or promotion of any kind, depending on what sort of job you're working in, you need to be able to document that. And I think web-based materials do a great job of documentation, but need to make more persuasive case when it comes to, okay, why is this valuable as research? And it definitely is. So the purpose of having the MLA book in part was to say, yes, this is legitimate scholarship. The purpose of the Unterrichtspraxis special issue is also to make that scholarship more legitimate. And when you can point to that, then it will be more acceptable to colleagues as a whole. So you have to talk to all parts of the educational ecology.
Well, that fits well with my next question for Nicole, which is how, like, if we're thinking about the educational ecology and then graduate students in particular, Nicole, it's been great to have your reflections as a graduate student, and I'm wondering what you think about how this website could be used for graduate students in general as part of their research project, or if you've had any ideas about that.
So yeah, we can just say, let's think big for 1 second. And the best thing that could happen maybe is when we have a graduate seminar teaching about ecology or environment and something like that. Probably everyone has assignments that ask for an abstract for a conference or, create a syllabus. And finally, we have a platform where we can post it as graduate students so that we don't do it just for the sake of the assignment, but we can really put our work out there. And then with this website, it's not only just posted, but it is also reviewed. So, there's a process that allows students to be acknowledged for the work they do. And once it's posted, it means, okay, it has a specific kind of quality that is guaranteed by posting it on this website. And so maybe one day it will be acknowledged and I can put it on my CV. I posted on a website like ours. So this would be the best ideal world for our website, or environment for our website, I would say.
Yeah, that's great. I have one final question that I'll ask to Charlotte and Beth, and maybe also to the broader audience that you can be thinking about, because after this, we'll be happy to open the Zoom up for a discussion with anyone who's interested. And this is my concluding question. So for Charlotte and Beth and Nicole, I suppose, and Seth and Dan, everyone, one key component that we seek to address in our work is building partnerships. And we mean this with both our collaboration here together and also connecting with local communities for civic engagement projects, and then creating opportunities for collaboration with other teacher scholars. So I'm wondering if you would like to comment on your experience with building partnerships and working in collaboration, and perhaps as a bonus, what role intercultural communication plays in partnership building.
Okay, well, I just got a lot of ideas that I hadn't prepared, but so I think I'm going to go with the thing that's right on the top of my mind right now, and that is sharing the spotlight. And I have a lot to thank Charlotte for that. Creating opportunities for other people. And I thank you, Kylie, for inviting me to submit something to the GSA this last fall. So I say, think about how can we encourage one another and help each person bring their strengths to a project. It's not all, we're not all going to bring the same thing. It's not all going to look the same. But I think helping us each feel like we are contributing. I think in this field, we bring that passion. We want to be doing something. And so I think helping each other have that opportunity is important also in building that momentum and sustainability of the project. And the other thing I was going to say is, when you find someone that you really click with, stay in contact with them. Don't let it go by, stay in contact with them, find out what they're working on, what their new ideas are, toss some ideas around, and try to find something that you actually are working on together so that you have this joint sense of accomplishment. I think that's important.
Yeah, so I would second completely what Beth was saying about collaborate with others. That is absolutely key, and look for all of those openings. Once you're looking for the possibility of community partnerships or outreach from campus or engagement opportunities, they start bubbling up, and you have to decide, okay, do I do this or do I not? And usually I would be inclined to say, yes, let's do it, because this is the way to move the project forward. I also agree completely with sharing with others. Those opportunities is really, really important. There have been many times when people have written to me and said, oh, what about this? What about that? And I've said, well, I don't really think I can do it right now, but I know somebody who can. Let me pass this on to you. And that is a cause for joy. And it also helps us build a better world. So I think this is what we need to be doing all the time. There's a lot of limit on what we can do in terms of time and energy, and carrying that across many different people and staying in contact with people. Many of you in the workshop today, or in this web launch today, I've talked with at conferences. I've said, what are you teaching? Do you want to know what I'm teaching? It's been a wonderful way to really grow and develop my thinking about how to approach this material.
Yeah, so we can open it up now to anyone. I think the best way to have a discussion on Zoom is perhaps indicate in the chat if you have a question, and we'll invite you then to unmute. You can also write your comments in the chat, and we'll leave questions for people who want to unmute themselves. And while you're perhaps coming up with a question, I'd also like to invite Seth, Dan, and Nicole to share any of their thoughts on community partnerships or just anything about the project that we didn't cover already, and I'll monitor the chat.
I'll just add that in developing partnerships with the community, it's easy for German studies programs to feel out of touch with their local communities, and working with the environmental issues and sustainability is a way to address that. And when you start those partnerships, bring, like Beth was saying, you really want to have a long-term view. Relationship building is only long-term relationship building, and show up with something to the table, whether it be sharing the spotlight or, there's a great deal of interest in the US in German-speaking cultures and their relationship to climate action, sustainability, and the environment. So that's attractive, and sharing an international stage is one of the things that German studies programs can do. And then, if you can really maximize that benefit, find the partners that are going to benefit most from that, then you have an open doorway, and then you just need to make sure that that doorway stays opening by continuing to care for the relationship.
And I might add the sort of unexpected value I've found in small partnerships, really local, and it can just be other offices on campus who are doing similar work and are just really interested to find out what we can offer from a different cultural perspective. And when I first started doing this, I felt like there needs to be some transformative thing that we can provide. And a lot of times it's not that. Simply the act of being a partner and inviting somebody else in can lead to new ideas. And I don't know, I've sort of found myself thinking smaller and smaller, and then that leads to a lot of new opportunities opening up.
All right, we have two similar questions in the chat from Colin and Barbara about examples of civic engagement projects or partnerships, because I do think for a German studies audience, we sometimes don't realize that we can do this type of work. And I'm going to put Beth and then Dan on the spot and ask them both to talk about the courses that they've taught that include partnerships. Beth, the one that you can all read about in the Unterrichtspraxis very soon, we promise, very soon. Beth, do you want to talk about that? And then Dan, your course in Duluth.
So are you referring to the idea of the telecollaboration?
That you had to pivot to.
Yeah. So I'm trying to put places together with civic engagement. But so I guess, okay, here I got it. All right. So I had designed a study abroad course, and part of it was we were going to be in Germany speaking with, people in different businesses and environmental organizations. And when that wasn't possible, the pivot I made was to have students have individual conversations via Skype or Zoom with students at at a university in Germany. And so one of the things that I think was really key for that in thinking about civic engagement was getting to hear from other people in another culture the way they are living out their interest in sustainability. And so it brought it down from large national things to a real everyday type of engagement with these issues. And I think that was helpful for students. Just one other thing that happened more recently is in a module that I developed over the summer for this fall about health in cities and the impact of climate change. And what I did there was we looked at a project in Vienna, Wien Begrünen, and ways that citizens made suggestions for adding greenery to the city. And I had my students do that same thing here in our local community. And we didn't present it beyond our class, but they really enjoyed thinking about what they had learned from the German or the Austrian context, and then seeing what's going on in my own community. And so I think making those connections is really important.
Right. And I'll just, as a transition to Dan, Beth, you're so good at pointing out the cultural background and that that's going to be different for each person in each place, and that has to be addressed. And then Dan can talk about his course, and Seth, you too, maybe more about what you've done with local communities.
Thank you. So very briefly, and the course that you can read about in the Intermix Praxis piece brings together our local community here around Duluth, Minnesota, and some partners that we have through the Climate Smart Municipalities Exchange. And that's an exchange between 5 cities in Minnesota and 5 cities in North Rhine-Westphalia. And the goal of the course is to get students to pose questions about what we're excited to investigate in German-speaking cultures in the context of things that are happening in their local community. And that really just brings tons of benefits to the intercultural learning that we're trying to do. It helps us avoid those pitfalls of thinking pie in the sky about beautiful German examples and the promise of a green Germany that is difficult to identify. And instead, people are really asked to do intercultural learning by understanding where is my community at. And of course, many undergraduates don't know, so they need to learn that first. That's the first third of my course. First 2/3 of the course is really learning about German work in sustainability and climate action, and then learning about your own community while still continuing the conversation in German. And then the third part, we do a collaborative online international learning exchange between Duluth and our partners in Germany. And my students then become the ambassadors, can become the people that work between German and American, both languages and cultures. And just one other note, you know, as someone said, you know, when you're in first year German and you're trying to come up with an environmentally conscious exercise in very language focused work, it's hard to figure out how you're saving the planet, of course. And that is hard. And that continues throughout all of the examples we're talking about. I think it's helpful to note, you know, our university system, higher education in the US, is also figuring out how it is that we're supposed to address societal needs. Because for a long time, many of us have not really focused on that. And that is one of the reasons why it's difficult to think your way through. And the focus of my course is giving students an example of how challenging it is, but also how one can get from that beginning point, your own community, to an exchange that has global context, and then bring that lesson in an informed way back to your community.
And I'm actually going to share the link. So my course, I taught a course at St. Olaf College that was in some ways inspired by what Dan had already taught the year before at the University of Minnesota Duluth. What I learned as I was thinking about how to teach my own Green Germany course was that I was arriving at St. Olaf just as the city of Northfield, Minnesota was drafting its climate action plan. And so that wound up being kind of the center of the course I taught, where I had students learn about what was going on with the city. And it's a small enough city that I could sort of get the Environmental Quality Commission of the city to have one of their meetings at St. Olaf College, so I didn't have to organize transportation. And so the students just went to this meeting of a city organization to find out, like, what are they working on right now? And then they did sort of research projects over the course of the term and presented them back. And it was a lot of fun. There are a lot of things about it that I was new and I was still learning and I would do differently. But I think that is sort of a large scale thing that can be really exciting. But as I was learning, and I guess as I was learning about how to do civic engagement well there, I was part of a community of practice on campus with faculty from lots of different disciplines. And we visited community partners in the city in various places. And one thing that really stuck with me was hearing about a music professor who had gone to a local kind of youth center, thinking like, I will do a community engagement project where I will teach the kids music and that'll be fun. And it just didn't go over well. It was too one-sided, one-directional. And as he worked his way through, he found if he just went and like hung out in the corner playing his guitar, students would come over, and that wound up being the core of the starting point of a really successful partnership where they would create things together. And so that's when I've been thinking about now, like for doing things like this again, just kind of finding people in town who are interested in similar things to what we're studying in class, and then creating a scenario where my students go to these places and start talking to the people, sharing what they know, learning what other people are interested in. That's kind of the new way I'm thinking about partnerships, is it doesn't need to be working towards a clear like problem to be solved right now, but rather just starting to talk to each other where we might have not have talked to each other before this class.
That's great. And it's wonderful to see everyone posting in the chat and seeing insights. I'm seeing Tom Leakin's post with some advice on working with community partners. And Tom was also in that seminar room and echoed comments that Charlotte made of this think big, start small, move fast, of just working in iterations. And that was very helpful to hear from him then and to reiterate again now. And I promised to be punctual, so I shall. And I would like to thank all of you for being here. Thank Charlotte, Malene, and Beth Couch so much for taking time to join us here virtually and for being part of that momentum that's been building and part of these projects. The website works best with all of you. It grows with you. So if you have even the smallest idea, we've been talking about these small teaching-like concepts. So please submit it. You can navigate on the website to the left-hand bar to submission guidelines, read that over, and then you can get to the submission form. It doesn't post automatically. We review the work and post it. So there will be that review process built in. But once again, thank you so much, everyone. It was wonderful to see you and share this conversation with you. Take care. Bye, everyone.